Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Shola Shieli. Let's go straight away to our conversation for today. My guest is a chartered arbitrator, a notary public, an alumnus of the Universities of Nigeria, Nsukka and Lagos. She obtained her LLB and LLM respectively in 1984 and 1991 and was called to the Nigerian bar in August 1985. She became a senior advocate of Nigeria in 2007, the seventh lady to be so conferred. Mianaya SAN is the immediate past chairperson of the Section on Legal Practice of the Nigerian Bar Association, a member of the Adjunct Faculty of the Nigerian Law School Abuja, and an approved tutor of the Faculty of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom, teaching all aspects of domestic and international commercial arbitration. With offices in Port Harcourt and Lagos, Mia is a much sought-after speaker and resource person who has contributed numerous scholarly articles to legal publications, journals, and books. But how does she juggle all of these things? Well, I sat down for a brief chat with her in her Lagos office. I began my interview with her by asking if she had always wanted to be a lawyer and what that journey has been like.
To start with, I didn't want to be a lawyer initially, actually. That's
Really?
the truth. I chose to go into law because I was actually rebelling. My father wanted me to do medicine, so I chose the opposite, which I felt at the time was law. So
That was what you wanted?
I'm not really sure I gave it a lot of thought. I think my dad wanted me to do medicine and I just decided I was just going to do law. You know,
Why law? Why not something else?
I have no idea, you know, but that was just what I chose. Okay. And so how's the journey been so far? It's been good. Challenging, naturally, like most professions, but I think it's been worth it.
What do you think of women and how they fared in the legal profession, especially when you consider the number that are senior advocates of Nigeria and those who've aspired to the bench?
Well, let me start with being on the bench. There are quite a lot of women judges. They're actually, I think, anecdotally, they're in the majority. I hear there's a significant number of female judges, so I don't really think we have that problem with the bench. At the bar, in terms of verified numbers of practitioners, there are supposed to be 14,000 female practitioners, as against 47,000 in total verified. So that tells you that it's less than half verified, and that's what is on the NBA verified numbers, give or take. Now, in terms of being a senior advocate of Nigeria, of course, there are things you must attain. You must have done a certain number of cases at the Supreme Court, at the Court of Appeal. You must be a partner in a firm and some other things like that. So the challenges most females face are at certain points, especially those who have families or young children. It's difficult being able to combine that journey with taking care of your family or your children. And so along the line, a lot of people put their families first and then have to address those things later. Using myself as an experience, it was when my children went into boarding school that I was then able to actively, you know, go around the country when I was doing my cases. So those are the challenges the average lady faces. And that's the reason why right now, out of 548 senior advocates of Nigeria that have attained the rank, only 23 have been women.
548 senior
Yes.
advocates, only 23 are women.
Alive and dead.
Wow.
Yes, dead or alive.
And
yes.
there are 14,000 verified women lawyers in Nigeria.
Yes.
Wow. And
yes.
only 23 are senior advocates.
Yes, I'm sure we'll do better as time goes. As time goes by, we need to have more ladies in partnership positions, and that's changing significantly. So you do have quite a number in the pipeline who will get to those positions, but it's a journey, and I'm sure we'll get there.
You told us a bit about some of the challenges family-wise, having to balance that. I know the lawyers have long working hours, but how do you balance family and the work?
Well, mine has always been a bit peculiar. I'd never been one to take work home, except in exceptional cases. So immediately I get to work, I would stay in my office. I don't do lunch breaks. I would stay in my office from the minute I get into work till it's time to close. And I feel if I've not achieved anything within those hours, then whatever it is can wait till the next day.
The question of disparity in the professional world, especially based on gender, did you encounter any, and how did you deal with it?
I grew up in a family where gender wasn't an issue. So it took me a while to recognize these gender issues because that wasn't my background. My father didn't treat people any differently, so I didn't know there was an expectation of me as being female and not doing this and not doing that. So I did not personally recognize them, and so that's what I explained to people. They may have been there, but because I didn't know that was what it is, I would probably just put it down to you didn't like me or something, but not because of my gender, because I never for once felt I was different or inferior because I was female. So if it came to attaining certain things, my default mechanism would be to say the other person was better, not because I didn't get it because I was female. And while I do recognize that there are gender equality issues, and they are very serious, I find that sometimes it may just be that the other person is better. And I think it's part of telling ourselves the truth that while gender is an issue, we need to also recognize that at times the other candidate is just better. So that's my perspective. Now, having said that, on occasions where I did encounter it, I would try to set the record straight as best as I could. And more often than not, that worked for me. And yeah, I'm not quite a pushover.
It's generally assumed that women are weak. And so when they find themselves in leadership positions, people say that to prove themselves, they become aggressive. Is that true?
I've never been one to bother about what people say. I just focus on what I want and make sure I achieve it. And if you feel you have to use certain adjectives I find are inappropriate, that's your problem, not mine. I don't dwell on such things.
When it comes to women that are doing well and
Yes.
people use those terms for them, oh, you're aggressive, you're assertive, you're this and that, how do you advise that they deal with it?
I think they should just ignore them. A lot of times when people say things like that to you, they're invariably jealous or they're suffering from some sort of complex and they don't know how to express themselves. And so they are actually probably feeling they wish they were in your position, and so the only way they can try to make you feel bad is to try and put you down. So, don't let them get to you.
Just ignore it.
Just ignore it and continue with what you're doing.
Okay. What about where they come from? Should that be a determining factor for them to serve? Case in point, the Cross River State Judiciary.
Absolutely not. I think that in 2020, that's one of the most distressing days I've had, that in this day and age, we still have a situation where a judge who has served her state meritoriously is denied being made the chief judge just because she comes from Akwa Ibom. And I think when I think about the Cross River Akwa Ibom scenario, it's the most ridiculous one, because there was one state, Cross River, and I think it was in 87 or thereabouts that Cross River and Akwa Ibom, Akwa Ibom was carved out of Cross River State. So here's a fine lady who has served Cross River State all her life, and suddenly the fact that she's from Akwa Ibom suddenly means she's a security risk. I think it's most unfair, and I think it's unreasonable, and it's unbelievable. And when I put in perspective what the converse in River State, where Governor Wike, despite protestations, went ahead to make the most senior judge at the time, Justice Yayi Lamikira, the chief judge of River State. And he made it clear that he could not understand what had changed from the time she was serving the state meritoriously till it became time for her to become CJ. And he ignored everybody and went ahead and made Justice Lamikira the chief judge of River State. And that is a perfect example. That is how Nigeria is supposed to be. I don't know how you are expected to put in your best in an organization when suddenly, where you're supposed to be put in another position, a more senior position, suddenly where you come from becomes material. I think it's the most ridiculous thing.
Are you satisfied with the way that the bar handled it though?
I don't think the bar has finished. The president had put out a very stern statement, and other bar-related organizations have done so as well. There's been an uproar over the entire thing, and I'm sure it's still going on, so I can't say that it's concluded. But if you read the statement the president put out, it was very, very clear that it was unacceptable, and we stand 100% behind what the president has said, because he speaks on behalf of all of us as members of the bar.
Is this something that could be tested in courts?
I really can't say right now if there are any plans. Of course.
But it can be.
I don't see any reason why not, but I do not know if there are any plans. I'm not in a position to say.
Okay. So with the benefit of hindsight, what would you say to your younger self, a young lady fresh out of law school, who wants to, take on the world, take on the legal profession? What would be the advice that you would give?
I think I'll just tell them, go for it. There are no obstacles. There are no barriers. The world is yours. It's up to you to do and be whatever you want to do. Beg your pardon, and achieve whatever you want to achieve. There's nobody stopping you. There are no limitations. It's only you that can limit yourself. And so I would say to my younger self, go for it. That's all I'd say.
I want us to end with something on the laws. We know that a lot of people say that the wheels of justice grind slowly. When you go to court, now you hear that even at the appellate stages, lawyers are getting dates of 3 years, 4 years before their appeals are heard. And, it's like the process is so slow. What advice would you give for constitutional reforms? I know that the Senate, the National Assembly, is planning some form of constitutional amendment, but what are those areas that you think that they can be looking at, especially in the areas of speedy dispensation of justice?
In terms of speedy dispensation of justice, I can tell you that a significant number of high courts have different rules that have now been geared towards a speedy dispensation of justice. So if you look at the 2019 Lagos State rules, the Federal Capital Territory 2018 rules, the River State rules, the Federal High Court rules 2019, they're all geared to a speedy dispensation of justice, leaving less time for lawyers to maneuver the system and delay matters.
But that's not the reality.
Well, yes, but then the reality is that what's going on right now, the rules are there. Okay. And so maybe along the line, when judges now start imposing the type of costs the Supreme Court has started imposing on counsel who delay matters and things like that, maybe lawyers will sit up and learn to handle their matters with dispatch. Now that's for the trial courts. Now at the appellate courts, unfortunately, their dockets are full. And it's just that simple. And if you go to the Court of Appeal, sometimes you see 20, 25 cases. How on earth do you actually genuinely think that they can handle that workload? So like some jurisdictions have more than one panel, some have one panel, depending on the amount of work, about the number of cases they have there. So I think that the appellate courts are trying within the limitations, which is that they have dockets, full dockets. And the reality is that a lot of these cases are frivolous. And so if there were to be any constitutional amendments, it would be in terms of limiting what should go to the Supreme Court, so that the Court of Appeal for certain cases becomes the final court. I think that's one of the ways of trimming down the workload for the Supreme Court.
For election matters, governorship, should it stop at the Court of Appeal the way it used to?
Governorship, no. I think Supreme Court is still appropriate.
For governorship?
For governorship.
Because during election years, what you find is that the election cases take over the dockets of the court, and then regular cases get shut out.
That is true. But unfortunately, they are very time sensitive. And so until the law changes, they have to be given priority.
But you don't think that the laws should change?
Not particularly. I think it's all about case management. It's all about ensuring that when your matter is set down for hearing, you are ready to go on. Because it's not unusual, and while I don't have statistics, a reasonable amount of time you go to court, a matter is set for hearing, a lawyer pops up and says, oh, I just filed something now. So there must be a cost associated with the inability for the matter to proceed that day. And perhaps when costs are awarded on a more regular and punitive basis, then we will all sit up, because the justice suffers, the client suffers, and at the end of the day, justice denied is no justice delayed is no justice.